The waitress thought her biggest problem was making rent until two men in expensive suits shattered her arm like glass and whispered about a $50,000 debt she'd never heard of. What Emilia Russo didn't know was that across town, the most feared man in the city had been watching her every move, haunted by ghosts from his own tragic past. When their worlds collided in a hospital room that night, neither could predict that her broken bones would become the foundation of an empire built on obsession, protection, and a love so dangerous it could destroy them both. But the real shock? The debt collectors who hurt her were just pawns in a much deadlier game. And the man who saved her life was about to risk everything, including a war between rival families, for a woman he barely knew. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are born from the most brutal betrayals. The fluorescent lights in Tony's diner buzzed like angry wasps overhead. Emilia Russo wiped down the last sticky table, her shoulders aching from the 12-hour shift. The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m., and she still had to count her tips and check on Luca. She pulled the crumpled bills from her apron pocket. $23.47. Her heart sank. It wasn't enough for Luca's medicine, not even close. "Mama?" a small voice called from the corner booth. Emilia looked up to see her 7-year-old son rubbing his eyes. Luca had been sleeping in the back booth for the past 3 hours, curled up under her old jacket. His pale face looked even thinner than usual, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Hey, baby, time to go home." She forced a smile and walked over to him. Luca didn't speak much these days. The doctors said it was normal for some kids after trauma. His father leaving them 2 years ago had hit him hard. But Emilia knew it was more than that. Luca was sick, and the medicine was expensive. She helped him into his worn sneakers and grabbed her purse. The diner was empty now, except for Joe, the cook, who was cleaning the grill in the kitchen. "Night, Joe," she called out. "Be safe getting home, Em," he replied, without looking up. The October air bit at her face as they stepped outside. Emilia pulled Luca close and started the 6-block walk to their apartment. The streetlights cast long shadows, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. A black car sat at the curb across the street. The engine was running, but she couldn't see who was inside through the tinted windows. Her pace quickened. "Mama, I'm tired," Luca whispered. "I know, sweetheart. We're almost home." The car's headlights turned on as they reached the corner. Emilia's heart started pounding. She grabbed Luca's hand tighter and walked faster. By the time they reached their apartment building, the car was gone. But the uneasy feeling stayed with her as she fumbled with the keys to their front door. Their apartment was small and cramped. The paint peeled on the walls, and the heater only worked half the time. But it was theirs, and it was safe. Emilia tucked Luca into his bed and kissed his forehead. He was already asleep before she turned off the light. In the kitchen, she opened the pill bottle that held Luca's medicine. Only 3 pills left. The pharmacy wouldn't give her more without payment, and her paycheck wouldn't come until Friday. 3 days away. She sat at the small table and put her head in her hands. How had her life become this hard? Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You owe us. Pay up or else." Emilia stared at the screen. She didn't owe anyone money. This had to be a mistake. She deleted the message and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. Morning light streamed through the thin curtains as someone pounded on the door. Emilia jolted awake and checked the clock. 7:30 a.m. The pounding came again, harder this time. "Mrs. Russo, open up! It's Mr. Patterson." Her landlord. Emilia's stomach dropped. She wrapped her robe around herself and opened the door, keeping the chain lock in place. Mr. Patterson was a short, thick man with greedy eyes. "Rent's due today, Mrs. Russo. I don't see a check." I told you I'd have it by Friday when I get paid. That was last month's excuse. He pushed against the door. I want the money today, or you're out. Please, Mr. Patterson, my son is sick. I just need 3 more days. Not my problem. Money today, or I start eviction. He turned and walked away. Emilia closed the door and leaned against it. Her hands were shaking. Where would they go if they got evicted? Mama? Lucas stood in his pajamas looking scared. Everything's fine, baby. Just a grown-up conversation. She knelt down and hugged him. How are you feeling today? He shrugged. That was his answer for everything lately. She got him dressed and made breakfast with the last of the cereal. While he ate, she counted the money in her wallet again. $18. Not enough for rent, medicine, or groceries. I have to go to the pharmacy, she told him. Want to come with me? Luca nodded and took her hand. The walk to the pharmacy took 15 minutes. Emilia kept looking over her shoulder, remembering the black car from last night. But the streets were busy with morning traffic, and nothing seemed out of place. At the pharmacy counter, she handed over Luca's prescription bottle. That'll be $67, the pharmacist said. Can I pay $18 now and the rest tomorrow? The young man looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, ma'am. Company policy says full payment up front. Please, my son needs this medicine. I understand, but I can't. Fine. Emilia's voice came out sharper than she meant. She grabbed Luca's hand. Come on, baby. Outside the pharmacy, she tried to think of options. She could ask Joe for an advance on her paycheck. She could call her sister, California, though they hadn't talked in months. She could... Excuse me. Emilia turned around. 2 men in dark suits stood behind her. They looked like they belonged in a movie about gangsters. Mrs. Russo? The taller one asked. Who's asking? We need to talk to you about a debt. I don't owe anyone money. The shorter man stepped closer. Your husband did. Now it's your debt. My ex-husband left 2 years ago. I don't know where he is. Doesn't matter. The debt stays with the family. Emilia pulled Luca behind her. What debt? How much? $50,000, with interest. Her legs almost gave out. $50,000? That was more money than she'd see in 5 years. I don't have that kind of money. Then you need to find it, fast. The taller man handed her a business card. It was blank except for a phone number. You have 1 week, he said. They walked away, leaving Emilia standing on the sidewalk with Luca clinging to her leg. Her hands shook as she looked at the card. Mama, who were those men? Luca whispered. Nobody important, sweetheart. But she knew that wasn't true. That night at the diner, Emilia couldn't focus. She dropped a tray of dishes during the dinner rush, and her boss yelled at her in front of everyone. The other waitresses gave her worried looks, but nobody asked questions. By closing time, she'd made even less in tips than usual. $19. At this rate, she'd never get enough money for Luca's medicine, let alone $50,000 for some debt she'd never heard of. She cleaned the last table and said goodnight to Joe. The parking lot behind the diner was dark except for one streetlight that flickered on and off. Emilia walked toward the street, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night. She was almost to the sidewalk when she heard voices behind her. There she is. She spun around. The 2 men from earlier stepped out from behind a dumpster. What do you want? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. The money, the tall one said. I told you I don't have it. Then maybe you need motivation. The shorter man grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. Pain shot through her shoulder. Let me go. Where's our money, lady? I don't have it. I make minimum wage at a diner. The man twisted her arm harder. She heard a crack, and then the world exploded in pain. Her arm bent at an angle that wasn't natural. Emilia screamed. The sound echoed off the buildings around them. She fell to her knees, cradling her broken arm against her chest. 1 week, the tall man said. Find the money, or next time it'll be worse. They walked away into the darkness, leaving her alone in the parking lot with tears streaming down her face. She fumbled for her phone with her good hand and dialed 911. "Help me," she whispered when the operator answered. "Please help me." The hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Emilia sat on an examination table while a young doctor wrapped her arm in a cast. The pain. Medication made everything fuzzy, but she couldn't stop thinking about Luca. "You'll need to keep this cast on for 6 weeks, the doctor said, "and you should file a police report." No police. "Mrs. Russo, someone broke your arm. This wasn't an accident." "It's complicated." The doctor looked like he wanted to argue, but he just handed her some pills for the pain and discharge papers. Emilia tried to call Mrs. Garcia, the neighbor who sometimes watched Luca, but there was no answer. Panic rose in her throat. Where was her son? She was about to call the police when a soft voice spoke behind her. "Mrs. Russo?" Emilia turned around. An older woman with kind eyes and gray hair stood in the doorway. She was well dressed, but not fancy, like someone's grandmother. "I'm Teresa. I found your little boy in the hallway of your building. He was scared and looking for you." "Oh, God, is he okay?" "He's safe. He's with me." Relief flooded through her. Thank you so much." "He's a sweet child, very quiet." "Where is he now?" Teresa hesitated. "He's at my employer's house. Mr. Vitale wanted to make sure the boy was protected." The name sounded familiar, but Emilia couldn't place it. "I need to get him." "Of course, but first, Mr. Vitale would like to speak with you." A man appeared in the doorway behind Teresa. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that fit him perfectly. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and his eyes were the color of winter sky. Even through her pain medication haze, Emilia could tell this man was dangerous. "Mrs. Russo," he said in a voice that was calm but carried weight, "I'm Nico Vitale." Now she remembered where she'd heard the name. People in the neighborhood whispered about the Vitale family. They said he was connected to things that decent people didn't talk about. "Where's my son?" "He's safe. I give you my word." "I want to see him." "You will, but first we need to discuss the men who hurt you." Emilia's good hand tightened on the hospital bed rail. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Mancini family. They work for my competitor. The debt they mention belongs to your ex-husband. He stole money from Vittorio Mancini and disappeared." "That has nothing to do with me." Nico stepped closer. His presence filled the small room. "It has everything to do with you now. Mancini will keep coming after you and your son until he gets his money." "So what am I supposed to do?" "Let me handle it." The way he said it sent chills down her spine. She'd heard stories about what men like Nico Vitale did to their enemies. "I don't want your help." "Mrs. Russo, you're a single mother working at a diner. You make maybe $20,000 a year. These men want $50,000, and they're willing to hurt your son to get it." His voice stayed calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You don't have a choice." "There's always a choice." "Not this time." A nurse knocked on the door. "Mrs. Russo, you're all set to go." Nico stepped back. "Think about what I said. Teresa will give you my number." He left without another word, his footsteps silent on the hospital floor. Teresa handed Emilia a business card. Unlike the blank one from earlier, this one had a name and phone number in elegant script. "Your son is asking for you," Teresa said gently. "He's worried." Emilia looked at the card in her hand. Every instinct told her to stay away from Nico Vitale and his world. But the memory of her broken arm and Luca's scared face made the decision for her. Sometimes there really wasn't a choice. The taxi dropped Emilia off at her apartment building. Her arm throbbed despite the pain pills, and she felt dizzy from exhaustion. All she wanted was to hold Luca and figure out what to do next. But when she reached her floor, her apartment door was hanging open. Inside, everything was destroyed. The couch was slashed open, stuffing scattered across the floor. The kitchen table was overturned. Someone had written words on the wall in red marker, "Pay up or die." Emilia sank onto what was left of her couch and started to cry. 6 hours ago, she'd been worried about paying for medicine. Now her arm was broken, her apartment was destroyed, and dangerous men were after her son. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your choice. Call me." N. She stared at the message for a long time, then she dialed the number on Teresa's business card. "Mr. Vitale, it's Emilia Russo. I heard about your apartment. Are you hurt?" "No, just scared." "Where are you now?" "At my place, or what's left of it." "Pack whatever you can carry. My driver will be there in 10 minutes. I haven't said yes to anything yet." There was a pause. When Nico spoke again, his voice was softer. "Your son drew you a picture. He's worried about your arm." Emilia closed her eyes. She thought about Luca's scared face in the hallway, about the men who'd hurt her, about the impossible debt hanging over their heads. "Mrs. Russo, are you there?" "I'm here. Let me protect you, both of you." She looked around at her ruined apartment, at the threats on the wall, at the broken pieces of the only life she'd ever known. "Okay," she whispered. "The driver will be there soon. Pack light." After she hung up, Emilia sat in the wreckage for a moment longer. She was about to enter a world she didn't understand with a man who scared her. But for Luca's sake, she'd do anything. Even trust a stranger who might be more dangerous than the men who'd broken her arm. She stood up and went to pack their lives into 2 small suitcases, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. Outside her window, a black car waited in the darkness. The Vitale estate sat behind iron gates that looked like they belonged to a castle. Emilia pressed her face to the car window as they drove up the long driveway. Tall trees lined the path, and security cameras watched from every corner. The house itself was bigger than the entire diner where she worked. 3 stories of stone and glass, with columns that reached to the sky. Warm light glowed from dozens of windows. "This isn't real," she whispered. The driver, a quiet man who'd introduced himself as Marco, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "It's real. And it's safe." The car stopped in front of massive wooden doors. Before Emilia could get out, the doors opened and Teresa appeared. "Welcome," she said with a warm smile. "Luca's been waiting for you." Emilia's broken arm made it hard to carry her suitcase, but Marco took it without being asked. Inside, the house was even more overwhelming. The ceiling in the front hall reached up 2 stories, and a crystal chandelier hung like captured starlight. "Mama!" Luca ran down a curved staircase, his feet slapping against marble steps. Emilia knelt with her good arm open, and he crashed into her chest. "I missed you, baby. Are you okay?" He nodded against her shoulder. "The nice lady gave me ice cream, and there's a big TV with cartoons." "That's wonderful." She looked up at Teresa. "Thank you for taking care of him." "He's a lovely child, very polite." "Where's Mr. Vitale?" "In his office. He's finishing some business calls." Emilia felt relieved and disappointed at the same time. She needed to thank him, but she also wasn't ready to face him again. Teresa led them up the staircase to a hallway lined with paintings. At the end, she opened a door to a bedroom that was bigger than Emilia's entire apartment. "This is yours," Teresa said. "Luca's room is right next door, connected through that door there." The bed was enormous, covered in soft white sheets and pillows. French doors opened onto a balcony that overlooked gardens lit by tiny lights. "This is too much," Emilia said. "Mr. Vitale wanted you to be comfortable." Luca ran to the connecting door and peeked into his room. "Mama, come look." His room had a race car bed, shelves full of toys, and a window seat with soft cushions. Someone had put his few stuffed animals on the bed, making the space feel less foreign. "Do you like it?" Teresa asked. Luca nodded enthusiastically. It was the most excited Emilia had seen him in months. "I'll let you get settled," Teresa said. "Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join us, or I can bring something up here." "We'll come down. Thank you." After Teresa left, Emilia sat on the enormous bed and tried to process everything. 12 hours ago, she'd been a single mother working double shifts to survive. Now she was living in a mansion with a man who might be a criminal, but Luca was safe. That was all that mattered. Dinner was served in a dining room with a table long enough to seat 20 people. Emilia and Luca sat at one end, feeling lost in all the space. Nico entered as Teresa was serving the soup. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a button-down shirt, but he still looked dangerous. Rich and dangerous. "How's your arm?" he asked, taking a seat across from them. "It hurts, but I'll live." The doctor said 6 weeks in the cast. "You talked to my doctor?" "I wanted to make sure you'd get proper care." Lucas stared at Nico with wide eyes. Emilia had told him this was Mama's new boss, but she could tell her son sensed something different about this man. "Are you a policeman?" Luca asked suddenly. Nico's expression softened. "No, I'm not." "Are you a bad guy?" "Luca!" Emilia felt her face burn with embarrassment, but Nico didn't look offended. "That's a good question. Some people think I am." "What do you think?" Luca asked. Nico was quiet for a moment. "I think I'm a man who protects the people he cares about." "Do you care about me and Mama?" Emilia held her breath. This conversation was moving into territory that scared her. "Yes," Nico said simply. "I do." The rest of dinner passed in awkward silence. Luca ate everything on his plate, probably the most nutritious meal he'd had in weeks. Emilia picked at her food, too nervous to be hungry. After Teresa brought out dessert, Nico's phone buzzed. He looked at it and frowned. "Excuse me, I need to take this call." He left the room, but Emilia could hear his voice in the hallway. She couldn't make out words, but his tone was cold and sharp. "Mama, I like it here," Luca whispered. "It's just temporary, baby." "Can we stay forever?" "No, sweetheart, this isn't our home." But even as she said it, Emilia wondered where their real home was now. Their apartment was destroyed. She had no job, and men with guns were looking for them. Maybe this mansion was the safest place they'd ever be. That night, Emilia couldn't sleep. The bed was too big, too soft. Every sound made her jump. At midnight, she gave up and walked to the window. The gardens below were peaceful and quiet. Security lights created pools of brightness along the paths. She could see 2 men walking the perimeter, and she knew there were probably more she couldn't see. A soft knock made her turn around. "Come in." Nico opened the door partway. "I saw your light was on. Everything okay?" He was still dressed, she noticed. Did he ever sleep? "Just thinking." "Mind if I come in?" She nodded, and he stepped inside, keeping the door open. Even in her room, he was careful about appearances. "What happens now?" she asked. "Tomorrow, my men will get the rest of your things from your apartment, anything that can be saved." "That's not what I meant." He walked to the other window, giving her space. "The men who hurt you work for Vittorio Mancini. He's a competitor of mine." "You mean another criminal?" Nico didn't deny it. Your ex-husband stole $50,000 from Mancini and disappeared. Mancini wants his money back. So you'll pay it? It's not that simple. If I pay Mancini, it looks like weakness. Other families will think they can demand money from me too. So what's the solution? Nico was quiet for a long time. I need to convince Mancini that you're under my protection, that hurting you would be unwise. The way he said it made Emilia's skin crawl. What does that mean exactly? It means you and Luca stay here until this is resolved. For how long? I don't know. Emilia sank into a chair by the window. This is insane. A week ago, my biggest worry was paying for groceries. Now I'm hiding from gangsters in a mansion. I know it's a lot. Why are you helping us? You don't even know me. Nico was silent for so long that Emilia thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I had a daughter once. She would have been about Luca's age. Would have been. She died 3 years ago. The pain in his voice was so raw that Emilia felt tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. She was sick, like Luca, and her mother, my wife, she was beautiful and strong like you. What happened to them? They were killed. Because of me. Because of what I am. The silence stretched between them. Emilia wanted to ask more questions, but she could see that talking about his family was tearing him apart. I couldn't protect them, Nico said, but I can protect you. You don't owe me anything. He turned to look at her then, and she saw something broken in his eyes. Maybe I owe it to them. After he left, Emilia sat in the dark for a long time. She was starting to understand that Nico Vitale wasn't just a criminal who decided to help her. He was a man carrying a weight of grief that was crushing him. And somehow, she and Luca had become his chance at redemption. The next few days fell into a strange routine. Luca loved exploring the house and gardens. Teresa taught him to bake cookies in the enormous kitchen. The housekeeper treated him like a beloved grandchild, and he soaked up the attention. Emilia tried to find ways to help around the house, but Teresa wouldn't hear of it. You're a guest, the older woman insisted. Your job is to heal and let that boy be happy. I can't just sit around doing nothing. You're not doing nothing. You're being a mother. It was true that Luca was changing. He laughed more. He asked questions. He'd even started talking to Nico during their shared meals. Nico was different too. He was still serious and intimidating, but around Luca he became almost gentle. He answered the boy's endless questions with patience. He fixed a broken toy without being asked. He even read bedtime stories when Emilia's broken arm made it difficult. But Emilia remained wary. She'd grown up poor, and she knew that rich people's kindness always came with a price. On Thursday evening, that wariness proved justified. She was helping Teresa set the table when Marco burst into the dining room. "Boss, we've got a problem." Nico appeared instantly, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. "What is it?" "Mancini's men. They're at the front gate." "How many?" 6 cars. Nico's face went cold. "Get Mrs. Russo and the boy upstairs. Now." "What's happening?" Emilia asked. "Just go upstairs," Nico said without looking at her. "Stay away from the windows." Teresa took Emilia's arm. "Come, quickly." "I want to know what's going on." "Not now," Nico snapped. "Do as you're told." His harsh tone stung, reminding Emilia that she was dependent on this man's goodwill. She wasn't family. She was a burden he'd chosen to carry. Upstairs, she gathered Luca from his room and brought him into hers. Through the heavy curtains, she could see black SUVs lined up outside the gates. "Mama, what's wrong?" Luca asked. "Nothing, baby. Just some business Mr. Vitale needs to handle." But her heart was pounding. What if the men forced their way in? What if there was shooting? What if Luca got hurt because she'd brought him into this world? Voices drifted up from downstairs. She couldn't make out words, but she could hear Nico talking to his men. His tone was calm but commanding. An hour passed before Teresa knocked on the door. "It's safe now," she said. They left. Downstairs, Nico was in his study with Marco and two other men Emilia didn't recognize. They all looked grim. "What did they want?" Emilia asked. "To make a point," Nico said. "Mancini knows you're here now." "Is that bad?" "It changes things." Marco spoke up. "Boss, maybe we should—" "Not now, Marco." The other men left, but Marco lingered. "This is exactly what I was worried about. She's making you vulnerable." "I said not now." Marco shot Emilia a look that made her stomach turn. She could see the blame in his eyes. This was all her fault. After everyone left, Nico poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. His hands were steady, but Emilia could see the tension in his shoulders. "Maybe Marco's right," she said. "Maybe I should leave." "Where would you go?" "I don't know, but I can't stay here if it puts you in danger." Nico laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mrs. Russo, I've been in danger my entire adult life. That's not new. But this is different." "Yes, it is." He took a sip of his drink. "For the first time in 3 years, I have something worth protecting again." The way he said it made her heart skip. "Nico, get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step." But as Emilia went upstairs, she wondered if there really was a next step, or if she and Luca were trapped in this beautiful prison until one of these dangerous men decided their fate. Friday morning brought a new crisis. Emilia woke to the sound of shouting outside her window. In the gardens below, men in suits were running toward the back gate. She grabbed her robe and ran downstairs, finding chaos in the kitchen. Teresa was on the phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. Marco paced by the back door, barking orders into his radio. "What's happening?" Emilia asked. "Someone tried to break in through the back fence," Teresa said, hanging up the phone. "They didn't make it past the outer wall, but..." "But what?" Marco turned around, his face dark with anger. "They left a package." The kitchen table was a small box wrapped in brown paper. Nico stood over it, wearing latex gloves. "Don't open it," Emilia said, sudden fear gripping her. "I have to." Inside the box was Luca's stuffed elephant, the one that had gone missing from their apartment. But now it was stained with something dark and sticky, and one of its button eyes was torn off. Emilia felt sick. "They have his toy." "They had his toy," Nico corrected. "This is a message." "What kind of message?" "That they can get to him, that they know what matters to you." Emilia sank into a chair. "Oh, God." "Mama?" They all turned. Luca stood in the kitchen doorway, still in his pajamas. His eyes went wide when he saw his ruined elephant. "Mr. Elephant!" He ran toward the table, but Emilia caught him. "No, baby, don't touch it." "What happened to him?" Emilia looked helplessly at Nico. "How do you explain evil to a 7-year-old? "Some bad men found him," Nico said gently. "But he's okay. See? He's just a little dirty." "Can we wash him?" "We'll get you a new elephant," Nico promised. "A better one." But Luca shook his head. "I want Mr. Elephant. He's mine." The simplicity of a child's love broke something inside Emilia. Luca didn't care that his toy was ruined. He just wanted what belonged to him, just like she wanted her simple life back. But that life was gone now, destroyed as thoroughly as the stuffed animal on the table. Nico knelt down to Luca's level. "I promise those bad men will never hurt you or your mama. Do you believe me?" Luca studied Nico's face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Good. Now go with Teresa and pick out some new toys from the playroom. I need to talk to your mama." After they left, Nico turned to Marco. "Double the security. I want men on the roof, in the woods, everywhere." Boss, this is escalating too fast. Maybe we should what? Hand over a woman and child to Mancini? Let him torture her until she tells him where money is that she doesn't have? I'm just saying there are other ways. Get out. Marco's face flushed, but he left without another word. Alone in the kitchen, Nico and Emilia stared at the ruined toy. "This is my fault," she said. "No, it's mine." "How is this your fault?" "I should have ended this the first night. I should have gone to Mancini and settled it myself." "Why didn't you?" Nico picked up the stuffed elephant and examined it. "Because I wanted to find another way. A way that didn't involve violence. Since when do men like you avoid violence?" He looked at her then, and she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "Since I realized that violence took away everything I ever loved." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Emilia found herself looking at Nico differently, not as the dangerous man who'd taken her in, but as someone carrying his own pain. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I do what I should have done from the beginning." "Which is?" "I go see Vittorio Mancini." The way he said it sent ice through her veins. "Nico, no. What if he kills you?" "Then Marco will make sure you and Luca get somewhere safe." "That's not good enough." "It has to be." He started to leave, but Emilia caught his arm with her good hand. "Please, there has to be another way." "Mrs. Russo, Emilia, my name is Emilia." He stopped, looking down at her hand on his arm. "Emilia, this is the only way." "No, it's not. We could run, leave town, start over somewhere else." "Mancini has connections everywhere. He'd find you." "Then we keep running." "That's no life for Luca." "It's better than him losing another father figure." The words hung in the air between them. Nico's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't realized how much Luca had come to depend on him. "I'm not his father." "Try telling him that." Nico gently pulled away from her touch. "I'll be careful. I promise." "Your promises don't mean much if you're dead." "They mean everything if you're alive." He left her standing in the kitchen, holding a broken toy and wondering how her life had become so complicated that she was terrified of losing a man she barely knew. Outside the window, she could see Luca in the garden with Teresa, picking flowers for a bouquet. He looked happy and carefree, unaware that the adults around him were planning a war. Emilia made a decision then. If Nico was going to risk his life for them, she wasn't going to sit around waiting to become a widow again. She was going with him. Emilia waited until the house was quiet that night before putting her plan into action. Nico had spent the evening in his study, making phone calls and meeting with his men. She could hear voices through the heavy door, but couldn't make out the words. At midnight, she crept downstairs. The house felt different in the dark, bigger, more dangerous. Shadows seemed to move in corners, and every creak of the floorboards sounded like thunder. She found Nico in his study, sitting behind a massive desk covered in papers. A single lamp cast a pool of warm light over his work. He looked up when she knocked. "Can't sleep." "We need to talk." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "What's on your mind?" "I want to go with you tomorrow." "Absolutely not." "Hear me out." "Emilia, no, I won't put you in that kind of danger." "I'm already in danger." She stood up, frustration boiling over. "These men broke my arm. They destroyed my home. They threatened my son. I have a right to face them. You have a right to stay alive." "What if Mancini doesn't believe you? What if he thinks you're lying about protecting me?" Nico leaned back in his chair. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that he needs to see me make the choice myself, to tell him face to face that I'm under your protection. It's too risky. Everything about this situation is risky." Nico was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "You're terrified. I can see it in your eyes." Why would you want to walk into a room full of dangerous men? Emilia thought about Luca sleeping peacefully upstairs, about the ruined elephant, about the fear that had been eating at her for days. Because I'm tired of being a victim. Something shifted in Nico's expression. Sit down. She sat. If you came with me, you would do exactly what I tell you to do. No arguments, no heroics. Okay. You stay by my side at all times. You don't speak unless spoken to. And if things go wrong, you get behind me and let my men handle it. I understand. Emilia. His voice was gentle now. These aren't the kind of men who care about fairness or mercy. If this goes badly, I know. He stared at her for another moment, then nodded slowly. We leave at 10 tomorrow morning. Wear something conservative, nothing flashy. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The next morning, Emilia dressed carefully in a navy blue dress and low heels. It was the nicest outfit she'd brought with her, bought for job interviews she'd never gotten. Teresa helped her with her hair, pinning it back in a simple style that made her look older, more serious. You don't have to do this, the older woman said quietly. Yes, I do. Mr. Vitale is very capable. He's been handling dangerous men for years. This is about more than just the meeting. I need to know I can be strong enough to protect my son. Teresa's hands stilled in Emilia's hair. You've been protecting him his whole life, dear. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Downstairs, Nico was waiting by the front door. He wore a charcoal gray suit that made him look even more imposing than usual. 3 men stood with him, including Marco, who looked unhappy about the whole situation. Last chance to change your mind, Nico said. I'm ready. The ride to the meeting took 20 minutes through parts of the city Emilia had never seen. Old warehouses and industrial buildings lined the streets. Everything looked gray and forgotten. They stopped in front of a restaurant called Fratello's. It looked closed, but Marco got out and knocked on the door in a specific pattern. Remember what I told you, Nico said to Emilia. Stay close. Don't speak unless asked, and trust me. She nodded, her mouth too dry to answer. The door opened, and they were led inside by a man who looked like he could bench press a car. The restaurant was empty except for a table in the back corner where 3 men sat waiting. The man in the middle was smaller than Emilia had expected. Vittorio Mancini looked like someone's grandfather, with white hair and kind eyes. But the 2 men flanking him were younger and harder, with the cold stare of professional killers. Nico, Mancini said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, thank you for coming. Vittorio. They approached the table slowly. Emilia could feel eyes watching her from every corner of the room. More men stood in the shadows, hands resting inside their jackets. And this must be Mrs. Russo. Mancini's voice was pleasant, conversational. Please, sit. Emilia sat in the chair Nico pulled out for her, keeping her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. You look much better than the last time my associates saw you, Mancini continued. How's the arm? It's healing. Good, good. Broken bones are terrible things. So painful, so limiting. The threat in his words was subtle but clear. Vittorio, Nico's voice carried a warning. We're here to settle this business, not to make threats. Of course. Business. Mancini leaned back in his chair. Your husband owes me $50,000, Mrs. Russo, plus interest. Call it $75,000 now. I don't have that kind of money. I know. That's why we're all here. He looked at Nico. I assume you're prepared to cover the debt? No. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Emilia felt the men around them tense, ready for violence. No? Mancini's pleasant mask slipped slightly. Tony Russo isn't my responsibility. Neither is his debt. Then why are we here? Nico leaned forward slightly. Because Mrs. Russo is under my protection now, she and her son. Any attempt to collect this debt through them would be unwise. Are you threatening me in my own place of business? I'm explaining the situation. Mancini was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the table. Mrs. Russo, do you understand what Mr. Vitale is offering you? Emilia glanced at Nico, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. He's offering protection for me and my son. And in return? She hesitated. What was she giving Nico in return? She hadn't thought that far ahead. In return, Nico said smoothly, she manages my household staff, a legitimate employment arrangement. It was a lie, but it sounded believable. Mancini studied them both, looking for cracks in the story. A housekeeper? He said finally. How domestic. The debt belongs to Tony Russo, Nico continued. When you find him, you can collect, but his ex-wife and child are off limits. And if I disagree with this arrangement? The air in the room grew thick with tension. Emilia could see Nico's men shifting slightly, preparing for trouble. Then we have a problem, Nico said calmly. Mancini laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. You're willing to go to war over a waitress and her sick kid? If necessary. Why? What are they to you? Nico was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. They're under my protection. That's all you need to know. Mancini studied Nico's face, and Emilia saw the moment when understanding dawned in the older man's eyes. Ah, he said quietly. I see. Do we have an understanding? Nico asked. Another long pause. Then Mancini nodded slowly. We have an understanding. The debt remains with Tony Russo. His family is off the books. Emilia felt relief flood through her, making her dizzy. However, Mancini continued, if I find out this arrangement is temporary, if she's not really under your protection, the original deal stands. Understood. They stood to leave, but Mancini called out one more time. Mrs. Russo? She turned back. I hope you understand how lucky you are. There aren't many men who would risk a war for strangers. They're not strangers, she said quietly. Not anymore. Mancini smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. No, I suppose they're not. The ride back to the estate was quiet. Emilia stared out the window, trying to process what had just happened. She was safe. Luca was safe. The nightmare was over, but the cost was becoming clear. She was now tied to Nico's world in ways she didn't fully understand. You did well in there, Nico said finally. I was terrified. You didn't show it. What happens now? Now you and Luca get to live without looking over your shoulders. But we're still dependent on you. Nico glanced at her. Would you rather go back to your old life? Working double shifts, worrying about rent, your son's medicine? No, but what? This doesn't feel real. People like me don't live in mansions. We don't have protection from men like you. People like me? Emilia felt her cheeks burn. I didn't mean, yes, you did, and you're not wrong. I'm not a good man, Emilia. I've done things that would horrify you. Then why are you helping us? He was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. Because 3 years ago, I failed to protect the two people who mattered most to me. And when I saw you in that hospital bed, broken and scared, I couldn't fail again. The raw honesty in his voice made tears spring to her eyes. Nico. My wife was named Sophia. She was a teacher. She had a laugh that could light up a room. His voice was barely above a whisper. Our daughter was Isabella. She loved books and butterflies and chocolate ice cream. What happened to them? A rival family took them. They wanted to hurt me, so they went after what I loved most. His hands tightened on his phone. I found them too late. Emilia reached over and covered his hand with hers. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never let myself care about anyone again. It was easier that way. Safer. But then I saw Luca sleeping in that hospital chair, and you trying to be strong when everything was falling apart, and I couldn't walk away. They sat in silence for the rest of the ride home. When they pulled through the gates of the estate, Emilia could see Luca playing in the garden with Teresa. He's going to ask questions about where we went, she said. What will you tell him? That we went to solve some grown-up problems. And if he asks about the future, about how long you'll stay here? Emilia looked at Nico's profile, at the man who'd risked everything to keep her and her son safe. I don't know. What do you want me to tell him? Tell him he's home. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and promise. Home. It was something Emilia had been searching for, her whole life without realizing it, not just a place to live, but somewhere to belong. As they walked toward the house, Luca ran to meet them. Mama, Mr. Nico, I made you a surprise. He grabbed their hands and pulled them toward the garden, chattering about the flower arrangements he'd made with Teresa. For the first time in years, Emilia felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Maybe home wasn't about the size of your house or the money in your bank account. Maybe it was about the people who were willing to fight for you. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found hers. That evening, the three of them had dinner together on the terrace overlooking the gardens. Luca was full of stories about his day, telling Nico about the books Teresa had read to him and the cookies they'd baked. Can we have movie night? Luca asked as Teresa cleared the dinner plates. If your mama says it's okay, Nico replied. Please, Mama? Emilia looked at her son's hopeful face, at Nico's gentle expression, at the peaceful scene around them. A month ago, movie night had meant watching whatever was free on her old laptop while Luca shivered under thin blankets. Now they were sitting in luxury, safe and warm and cared for. Of course we can have movie night. They moved to the family room, a cozy space with an enormous television and sofas that felt like clouds. Luca picked an animated movie about a lost puppy finding his way home. Halfway through the movie, Luca fell asleep curled against Nico's side. The sight made Emilia's heart ache in ways she couldn't name. I should put him to bed, she whispered. Let me. Nico carefully lifted Luca without waking him and carried him upstairs. Emilia followed, watching as he tucked her son into the race car bed with gentle hands. Sleep well, buddy, Nico whispered. In the hallway outside Luca's room, they stood close together in the dim light. Thank you, Emilia said, for everything. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved our lives today. We saved each other. Something in his tone made her look up at him. The space between them seemed to shrink. Emilia. Yes? I need you to know that whatever happens between us, you and Luca will always be safe here. Even if you decide... Decide what? That you don't want this. Don't want me. Her breath caught. Is that what you think? That this is just about protection? Isn't it? She reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of his evening stubble under her palm. At first, maybe, but not anymore. What is it now? I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, she saw a vulnerability there that took her breath away. I'm not good at this, he said. At being normal. Neither am I. We'll figure it out together. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Together. Together. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, soft and sweet and full of promise. Good night, Emilia. Good night." As she watched him walk away, Emilia realized that for the first time since her ex-husband left, she wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family. The family they'd chosen, the family they'd fought for, the family they were still learning how to be. But they had time now, all the time in the world, and that was enough. 3 weeks later, Emilia woke to the sound of laughter outside her window. She smiled before she was even fully awake. Luca's giggles had become the soundtrack of their new life, replacing the worry and silence that had defined their days before. She pulled on her robe and stepped onto the balcony. Below in the garden, Nico was teaching Luca how to throw a baseball. Her son's form was terrible, but his enthusiasm made up for it. Every time the ball went wide, he would chase after it with pure joy. "Keep your eye on the ball," Nico called out patiently. "I am," Luca shouted back, winding up for another throw that sailed over Nico's head. They'd been doing this every morning for a week. Nico would finish his business calls early, change into jeans and a t-shirt, and spend an hour playing with Luca before breakfast. Watching them together made Emilia's heart feel too full for her chest. "Mama!" Luca spotted her on the balcony and waved enthusiastically. "Look how far I threw it." "Amazing, baby. You're getting so good." Nico looked up at her too, shielding his eyes from the morning sun. Even in casual clothes, he was devastatingly handsome. But it was the way he looked at her, like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, that made her pulse quicken. "Come down," he called. Teresa made pancakes. 5 minutes. She showered quickly and dressed in jeans and a soft sweater. The cast had come off her arm last week, and she was still getting used to having both hands free again. In the kitchen, Teresa was humming while she flipped golden pancakes on the griddle. The older woman had become like a grandmother to Luca, teaching him Italian words and sneaking him extra cookies when she thought no one was looking. "Buongiorno, cara," Teresa said warmly. "How did you sleep?" "Like a baby. Something about this house just makes me feel safe." "It is a good house for feeling safe. Mr. Vitale has worked hard to make it that way." Nico and Luca came in from outside, both of them grass-stained and grinning. Luca ran to Emilia and threw his arms around her waist. "Mama, did you see my throwing? I almost got it to Mr. Nico 3 times. "I saw. You're going to be in the major leagues soon." "What's the major leagues?" "It's where the best baseball players in the world play," Nico explained, ruffling Luca's hair. "Will you take me to see them someday?" "If your mama says it's okay." Luca looked up at Emilia with hopeful eyes. "Can we, Mama? Please. We'll see." It was her standard answer these days when Luca asked about the future. She was still getting used to the idea that they could make plans beyond next week's groceries or next month's rent. They sat down to breakfast together, and Emilia marveled at how normal it felt. Like they really were a family instead of 3 people thrown together by circumstances. "I have to go into the city today," Nico said as Teresa served the pancakes. "Some business meetings." "How long will you be gone?" Luca asked. "Just for the day. I'll be back before dinner." "Can I come with you?" "Not this time, buddy, but Marco's staying here and Teresa promised to teach you how to make that chocolate cake you liked." Luca perked up at the mention of chocolate cake, but Emilia felt a familiar twist of anxiety. She hated when Nico left for business. She never knew what kind of danger he might be walking into. After breakfast, Nico walked Emilia to the garden while Luca helped Teresa clear the dishes. "You're worried," he said, taking her hand. "I always worry when you leave." "It's just meetings today, boring stuff about territory boundaries and shipping schedules. Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "I'm not going anywhere, Emilia. You're stuck with me." "Good. Because Luca would be devastated if something happened to you." "Just Luca?" She smiled and stood on her tiptoes to kiss him softly. Not just Luca. When his car pulled away an hour later, Emilia watched from the window until it disappeared through the gates. The anxiety never fully went away, but it was getting easier to trust that he would come back to them. The day passed peacefully. Emilia helped Teresa with household tasks, grateful to feel useful again. In the afternoon, she and Luca worked on his reading in the library, a room filled with more books than her local branch library had owned. Luca was getting stronger every day. The medicine Nico's private doctor had prescribed was better than anything they'd been able to afford before, and the stress-free environment was helping him heal in ways that went beyond the physical. "Mama," he said as they finished reading a story about a brave knight, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby." "Is Mr. Nico going to be my new daddy?" Emilia's breath caught. She'd been expecting this question, but still wasn't sure how to answer it. "What makes you ask that?" "Well, he lives with us, and he takes care of us, and he reads me stories at night. That's what daddies do, right?" "Some daddies do those things. Yes. My first daddy didn't do any of that stuff." "No, he didn't." Luca was quiet for a moment, absently turning the pages of his book. "I like Mr. Nico better." "He likes you too, sweetheart." "Do you love him?" The directness of the question startled her. "Why do you ask?" "Because you look happy when he's around. Like really happy, not just pretend happy." Out of the mouths of babes. Emilia pulled Luca into her lap. "I do love him," she said quietly. "Is that okay with you?" "Yes, I love him, too." Luca looked up at her with serious eyes. "Does that make us a real family?" "What do you think makes a real family?" "People who take care of each other. People who don't leave." Emilia's heart ached for all the abandonment this little boy had experienced in his 7 years. "Then yes, baby, I think we're a real family." Luca smiled and snuggled closer to her. "Good. I was hoping so." That evening, as promised, Nico returned in time for dinner. He looked tired, but smiled when he saw them waiting for him in the foyer. "How are my favorite people?" he asked, dropping his briefcase and lifting Luca in a hug. "We made chocolate cake," Luca announced, "and Mama said we're a real family now." Nico's eyes found Emilia's over Luca's head. "She did she?" "Uh-huh, because we take care of each other and we don't leave." "That sounds right to me." At dinner, Luca chattered about their day, while Nico listened with the patience of a man who'd never been bored by a child's stories. Emilia watched them together and felt that familiar surge of love and gratitude. After Luca went to bed, she and Nico sat together on the terrace, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars come out. "He asked if you were going to be his new daddy," Emilia said quietly. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that was up to you." Nico was quiet for a long time. "I never thought I'd want to be a father again. And now? Now I can't imagine not being his father." He turned to look at her. "If you'll let me." "Nico." "I know it's complicated. I know my world isn't safe or normal, but I swear to you, I will spend every day of my life making sure you and Luca are protected and loved." Tears blurred her vision. "Is that a proposal?" "It's a promise. The proposal comes later when I've had time to find a ring worthy of you." "I don't need an expensive ring. You deserve everything beautiful in the world." She leaned over and kissed him, tasting wine and promises on his lips. "I already have everything I need." "What's that?" "You, Luca, this life we're building together." He pulled her closer, holding her like she was something precious. "I love you, Emilia, more than I thought I could love anyone again." "I love you too." They sat together in comfortable silence, planning a future that once seemed impossible. A future filled with Little League games and birthday parties, family vacations, and quiet Sunday mornings. A future worth fighting for. 2 months later, Emilia stood in the bathroom staring at a plastic stick that would change everything. Again, 2 pink lines. Her hands shook as she set the pregnancy test on the counter. This wasn't supposed to happen. They'd been careful, but apparently not careful enough. A baby. She was going to have Nico's baby. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Mama, are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just give me a minute." She hid the test in a drawer and opened the door, to find Luca waiting with a worried expression. "You look funny. Are you sick?" "No, sweetheart. Just thinking about grown-up stuff." "Is it bad grown-up stuff?" "No, it's surprising grown-up stuff." That seemed to satisfy him. "Mr. Nico is making French toast. He said to tell you it's almost ready." "Okay, I'll be down in just a minute." After Luca ran back downstairs, Emilia looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. How was she going to tell Nico? How was she going to tell Luca? What if Nico didn't want another child? What if the thought of risking another family was too much for him? But even as the fears circled in her mind, she felt a small flutter of joy. A baby. Their baby. Downstairs, Nico was flipping French toast with the same focused concentration he brought to everything else. He looked up when she entered the kitchen and frowned. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine, just tired." He studied her face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Are you sure?" "Yes, the French toast smells amazing." Breakfast passed in a blur. Emilia picked at her food, her stomach too unsettled to eat much. Nico kept shooting her concerned glances, but he didn't push. After Luca went outside to play, Nico cornered her in the kitchen. "What's wrong? And don't tell me you're fine. I can read you like a book now." Emilia looked into his worried face and felt her resolve crumble. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Nico's expression went completely blank, and for a terrifying moment, Emilia thought he was going to walk away. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. "Really?" "Really. I took 3 tests to be sure." He swept her off her feet, spinning her around the kitchen while she laughed and told him to put her down. "I can't believe it," he said, setting her down but keeping his hands on her waist. "We're having a baby." "You're happy?" "Happy?" "Emilia, I'm over the moon. I'm terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can barely breathe." Relief flooded through her. "I was afraid you wouldn't want another child after I lost Isabella." He cupped her face in his hands. "Losing her nearly destroyed me. But that doesn't mean I don't want the chance to be a father again, especially with you. It's going to change everything. Everything's already changed. This just makes it official." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of wonder. When they broke apart, Emilia felt like she could float. "When do we tell Luca?" Nico asked. "Soon, but I want to see a doctor first. Make sure everything's okay." "I'll call Dr. Morrison today. He's the best obstetrician in the state." "Nico, we don't need the most expensive doctor." "Yes, we do. You're carrying our baby. You get the best of everything." It was an argument she'd learned she couldn't win. Nico's protective instincts when it came to her and Luca bordered on obsessive, but she was starting to find it endearing rather than overwhelming. "What if something goes wrong?" she asked quietly. "Nothing's going to go wrong. But if it does, we'll handle it together. That's what families do." Families. Their family was growing. That afternoon, while Luca napped, they lay together in their bed talking about the future. About names and nurseries and whether they wanted to find out the sex beforehand. What if Luca's jealous? Emilia worried. He won't be. He's going to be the best big brother in the world. How can you be so sure? Because he has the biggest heart of any kid I've ever known. He'll love this baby as much as we do. Nico was right, as usual. When they told Luca a week later, after the doctor confirmed that everything looked perfect, his reaction was pure joy. "A baby sister?" he asked hopefully. "We don't know if it's a sister yet," Emilia explained. "It could be a brother." "I want a sister. Boys are loud," Nico laughed. "What does that make me?" "You're not a boy. You're a grown-up. That's different." They spent the rest of the evening making plans. Luca insisted the baby should have the room next to his so he could help take care of her. He drew pictures of the three of them plus a tiny stick figure baby, all holding hands under a bright yellow sun. That night, as Emilia was tucking him into bed, Luca grabbed her hand. "Mama?" "Yes, baby. Thank you for making us a real family." "You don't need to thank me for that, sweetheart." "But I want to. Before we came here, I was scared all the time. And you were sad even when you tried to pretend you weren't. But now we're happy. And we're safe. And we're going to have a baby. It's like all my wishes came true." Emilia kissed his forehead, her heart so full it ached. "Mine too, baby. Mine too." 6 months later, Emilia sat in a rocking chair in the nursery, holding their daughter for the first time. Sofia Isabella Vitale was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and her father's dark hair. She was named for the family they'd lost and the family they'd found. Nico stood beside them, looking down at his daughter with an expression of pure awe. "She's beautiful. She looks just like you. She has your nose." Luca peered over the arm of the chair, studying his new sister with serious concentration. "Can I hold her?" "Very carefully," Emilia said, helping him settle in the chair beside her. The baby fit perfectly in Luca's thin arms. He looked down at her with the same protective intensity his father showed, and Emilia knew that Sophia would never lack for people who loved her. "Hi, baby Sophia," Luca whispered. "I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you how to throw a baseball and read stories and make chocolate cake with Nonna Teresa." Emilia caught Nico's eye over Luca's head. They'd both heard him call Teresa grandmother for the first time, and the older woman would be thrilled. "She's lucky to have you as a big brother," Nico said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're all lucky," Luca replied, seriously. "Mama says we found each other when we needed each other most." It was true. A year ago, Emilia had been broken and afraid, working double shifts just to survive. Nico had been consumed by grief and guilt, closed off from any possibility of happiness. And Luca had been a scared little boy who'd learned too young that the people who were supposed to love you could disappear without warning. Now they were a family. Imperfect and complicated and born from tragedy, but real in all the ways that mattered. That evening, as they sat together for dinner, their first meal as a family of 4, Nico raised his wine glass in a toast. "To second chances," he said. "To new beginnings," Emilia added. "To chocolate cake," Luca chimed in, making them all laugh. They clinked glasses. Luca's contained apple juice, and Emilia looked around the table at the faces of the people she loved most in the world. She thought about the night her life had changed forever in that dark parking lot behind the diner. How the worst thing that had ever happened to her had led to the best thing. Sometimes broken things could be put back together into something even more beautiful than they'd been before. Sometimes love really could conquer all. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found your way home to people who would fight for you, protect you, and love you exactly as you were. As baby Sophia slept peacefully in her arms, and Luca chattered about his plans for tomorrow, and Nico watched them all with wonder in his eyes, Emilia knew she was home. Finally, completely, wonderfully home. The baseball sailed across the backyard in a perfect arc, landing squarely in Nico's glove. From her seat on the porch swing, Emilia watched her husband beam with pride. "That's my boy," he called out to 8-year-old Luca, who was practically glowing with satisfaction. "Did you see that, Mama?" Luca shouted. "It went exactly where I wanted it to." "I saw. You're amazing." 5-year-old Sophia looked up from the doll tea party she was hosting on the porch steps. "When do I get to play baseball?" "When you're bigger," Luca said, jogging over to retrieve the ball. "But I can teach you to catch if you want." "Yes." As her children played together in the golden evening light, Emilia rested her hand on her rounded belly. Their third child was due in 2 months, and according to the ultrasound, they were having another boy. Nico had cried when they found out.